the motion passed. Import and Export Amendment Bill 2023. This council now becomes Committee of the Whole Council to consider the Import and Export Amendment Bill 2023. Members may refer to the appendix to the script for the debate and voting arrangements for the bill. Members have been informed that the committee will conduct a joint debate on the clauses and amendments. I now propose the question to you that the following clauses stand part of the bill. Clauses 1 to 9. Dr. David Lam will move an amendment to amend Clause 3. Members may refer to the appendix to the script for details of the amendment. Members may now proceed to a joint debate on the clauses and amendment. I will first call upon Dr. David Lam to speak, but he is not required to move the amendment at this stage. Then I will call upon other members to speak. Upon the conclusion of the joint debate, the committee will first vote on the clauses with no amendment standing part of the bill, and then vote on the amendment. Dr. David Lam. Thank you, Madam Deputy. I need to declare I'm a member of COSH. Now for Import and Export Amendment Bill 2023, I'm proposing an amendment. I urge members to support my amendment. I will now explain the reasons and objective of the amendment. The Import and Export Amendment Bill 2023 seeks to allow the sea, air, and air-air transshipment of alternative smoking product. That's why there will be a new part under the Import and Export Bill. There are provisions on ASPs. They cover logistics, exemptions for air transshipment. And there will also be a new supervisory system run by the customs. Clause 13b of the bill sets out offenses of the import of ASPs. Anyone importing ASPs commits an offense. And this is, once convicted upon indictment, there will be a $2 million fine and imprisonment for 7 years. Let's call this the 13b offense. 13e. There are exemptions. First, an article in transit. Second, an air transshipment cargo. Third, a specified intermodal transshipment cargo imported by a registered operator. Clause 13E bracket 2 says this. If the good or the article is removed from the vessel or removed from an aircraft, or 3, if the article is removed from the airport's cargo transshipment area, or if the product has not entered the cargo, but it has been removed from the vehicle or vessel, or if the product is removed from the vehicle or vessel after it has entered the airport, that's an offense. 13p. The 13b offenses will be enforced by TACO. Clause 13o will be enforced by customs. But then something is missing. Articles in transit, articles through air transshipment. What happens when you have a 13b offense for articles in transit or through air transshipment? When ASPs are missing from the cargo, what happens? You can not imagine TACO doing that. When ASPs show up in the community, it's hard to imagine TACO investigating or prosecuting such cases. Aren't these cases supposed to be covered by the customs? I propose a very small amendment. That's for Clause 13o. When an article is in transit on aircraft, in a vessel, or part of an air transshipment cargo, in these cases, a 13b offense will be handled by the customs. My amendment simply tries to plug a gap. My amendment is about filling what's missing in the bill. These are criminal cases that warrant investigation. Now, of course, when a passenger carries a small amount of ASPs, the tackle should come in. That's not for the customs. If my amendment is passed, it will not affect the division of labor between tackle and the customs. My amendment will even foster the collaboration of the two departments so that each can do their job. Just then, the secretary was saying this. 13B offenses are just like the offenses related to intermodal transshipment. The customs will investigate the cases like what it does with smuggling. That's exactly what my amendment is about. That's why I call on members to support my amendment. Mr. Lai Tong Kwok. Madam Deputy, I speak in support of Dr. David Lam's amendment. And I also want to comment on the government's message on how we should support the government's bill. The government says the government has made a mistake about what it said. 13Q, an inspector with any suspicion that an article falls within the following cases, they can detain or remove such items. If first, the item is an alternative smoking product, or two, an offense under Section 13B has been or is being or is about to committed in respect of the article. An inspector may seize any other thing that appears to the inspector to be evidence of an offense under Section 13B. Dr. David Lam's amendment does not affect Clause 13Q. I don't see how that would cause problems for tackle's work. Madam Deputy, Dr. Lam proposes to amend Section 13O(3). His amendment is simply about the customs referring the case to tackle, and the case can be handled under Section 102 of the Criminal Procedure Ordinance. Dr. Lam is not trying to repeal the power of tackle to enforce the law. The government may have misread the provisions. My second point is this. The government said if ASPs are removed from an aircraft, a vessel, or air cargo area, that may be complex cases, and those cases will not go to tackle. The customs will enforce the law in those cases. In other words, the government does not oppose Dr. Lam's argument because complex or serious cases are handled by the customs. Madam Deputy, my question is for the Secretary. What gives the customs grounds for enforcing the law in this case? Are they trying to bypass 13O(2)? The government's reply is that the customs will invoke the anti-smuggling laws, but how? Are they trying to enforce a law because the e-cigarettes are unmanifested goods? Or is it about enforcing the law against e-cigarettes that are sneaked in? Will that give rise to another legal dispute? I hope the government can answer the questions I just raised. There's a serious flaw in the bill. Given that's the case, how come the government is against Dr. Lam's amendment? I urge the Secretary to explain this clearly to us. Mr. Frankie Yick. Madam Deputy, I speak against Dr. Lam's amendment. The amendment today is a much narrower version of the older version. Section 13O(3). Once a customs officer reasonably suspects that an article is a specified intermodal transshipment cargo, the customs will not refer the case to tackle. So for all intermodal transshipment of ASPs, the investigation and the prosecution will be handled by customs. But Dr. Lam's amendment now says that unless it is intermodal transshipment cargo, and even if the article is just in transition on an aircraft or in a vessel or an air transshipment cargo, the customs will have to investigate and prosecute. The matter is no longer in TACO's hands. Now, based on the Smoking Public Health Amendment Bill 2021, the work related to ASPs, this includes inspection, investigation, prosecution, and certification. TACO undertakes the work. The customs is simply charged with things that come in. So when one of the three things I just mentioned happens, TACO inspectors take over unless serious smuggling is involved. In those cases, the customs take over. Anyone trying to do intermodal transshipment of ASPs, they have to register with the customs for an exemption. Since this is under the monitoring of the customs assesses the risk. So Section 13(0)(3) says that specified intermodal transshipment cargo is handled by the customs, and that makes sense. Now, since the smoking statute has set out clearly the division of labor between TACO and the customs, and the customs has done its work by busting 951 cases and blocking 9.51 million pieces of ASP products. I don't see any ground for changing the system. I believe members received something from the Transport and Logistics Bureau. That's an explanation. The TLB explained clearly that articles in transit on an aircraft or in a vessel, if the article is removed deliberately from the plane or the ship, if there are missing declarations or false declarations, smuggling may be involved. Such cases will not go to TACO. The customs will investigate such cases. In rare cases, say by a mistake or other technical reasons. Now, what do we mean? Say a damaged plane. The goods have to be moved to a different plane. In that case, the ASPs are removed from the original plane. In such cases, the customs spots the case and then refers the case to TACO. That makes perfect sense. I fail to see a need in such cases to refer the case to the customs for further investigation. The final amendment of Dr. Lam was not discussed at the Bills Committee. That's why the Liberal Party and I do not support the amendment.
Mr. Shokafai, thank you, Madam Chair. But it's mentioned in the Bills Committee that TACO has taken over the job from the CNE, and that TACO officers are more clerical in nature, so it's not very appropriate for them to enforce the law. His amendments might have been revised, but the logic is the same. When we travel by plane back to Hong Kong, you see, CNE department officers may search luggage. If they see contraband, say ivory, they will arrest you, but they will not handle prosecution. The case will be handed over to the Agriculture and Fisheries Conservation Department. And if it is a piece of salted fish, they will arrest you, but the CNE department will not prosecute the case. The case will be referred to the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department. If weapons are found, then the case will be transferred to the police. So along the same logic, as mentioned by Mr. Frankie Yik, yes, it's been narrowed to plane to plane. The pilot might have disembarked from the plane and found that he's been carrying just a few ASPs. It's a minor case. And if there is any prosecution, the case will be transferred to TACO. There is no need for the case to be transferred back to CNE department, so I don't agree with Dr. Lam's amendment. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I call upon the Secretary for Transport and Logistics to speak. After that, I'll ask Dr. David LAM, who has moved the amendment, to speak again. Then the debate will come to a close. Secretary. Madam Chair, I thank members for their views. As I said in the resumption of second reading debate, the government has been working to combat on offences involving alternative smoking products, ASPs, and try to stop them from entering the market. Upon consideration, we think that the proposed enforcement arrangements are very effective against ASPs entering Hong Kong or being imported into Hong Kong. Dr. Lam's amendment involves the internal division of labor on law enforcement within the government. It undermines the work of TACO and CNE and the routine enforcement duties of the CNE department. This will, as a result, affect the law enforcement capabilities of the government, so we cannot accept Dr. Lam's amendment. A new control scheme will be put in place under the bill. The scheme will be in the charge of the CNE department. These cases will not be transferred to TACO. This is to address the concerns expressed by the healthcare sector and the education sector that ASPs may leak into the local market. We've also considered that intermodal transshipment may be more complicated. Asking the CNE department to take full charge of enforcement will be better. As a result, we have put in place relevant legal arrangements under Section 13(0)(3). In relation to Smoking Public Health Ordinance Cap 371, the enforcement work by CNE department and TACO of import of ASPs, including enforcement work on board of an airplane or vessels, since there is clear delineation of work and it's been operating well, we propose to keep the current arrangement. If ASPs in transit are removed deliberately from cargo transshipment areas, or if it involves misinformation or information being left out, the case will be taken up by the CNE department under import of ASPs offense as well as smuggling. TACO will not take up the case. If the case involving ASPs is only a result of human error or technical issues, that the ASPs are removed from the transshipment area, then the case will be first handled by the CNE department and then transferred to TACO. The current Division of Labor has addressed the concerns of Dr. Lam. There is no need to amend Section 13(0)(3) to provide that articles in transit or air transshipment cargo can only be enforced by Customs and Excise Department. I would like to emphasize that if the amendment is passed, the CNE department will no longer have the power to take up prosecution work once the case is taken up by TACO. There is no loophole under the current arrangement. The law has provided sufficient power to CNE department and TACO. Smoking Public Health Ordinance came into effect on the 30th of April 2022 by banning the promotion, manufacturing, and sale of ASPs. TACO is in charge of enforcement of the law. They are responsible for inspections, law enforcement, prosecution, handling of complaints, and for the CNE department, they're in charge of intercepting ASPs at control points. If it's a suspected article, they may detain the person or the articles until TACO officers arrive at the scene to take over the persons involved or the goods involved. The enforcement arrangement of offenses relating to ASP has been scrutinized and fully discussed by the Bills Committee on the Smoking Public Health Bill 2021. The risk of contravention by dubious parties is quite low. And the current Division of Labor has been operating effectively. So we propose the same enforcement arrangements under the bill. As I mentioned just now, the CNE department and TACO have their respective areas of enforcement clearly delineated. There is no need to change the current approach. Dr. Lam's amendment will affect the well-established arrangement. TACO officers will not be able to enforce the law involving articles in transit or air transshipment cargo. This will in turn dampen the effectiveness of their law enforcement capabilities. In relation to enforcement involving ASP offenses, it's actually similar with current duties taken up by the CNE department in relation to contraband or prohibited goods. If Dr. Lam's amendment is passed, it will have far-reaching implications on the duties of the CNE department. Under the bill, the exemption coverage is extended to specified intermodal transshipment of ASPs, and these parts will be transferred to the new part under the Import and Export Ordinance. The objective of the bill is not to amend the arrangements of enforcement or the offenses involving ASPs under the Smoking Public Health Ordinance. So we don't think there is a need to change the law enforcement arrangements that is in place at the moment. The provisions in relation to ban on ASPs will be moved to the Import-Export Ordinance. We think it is more appropriate. The bill proposes to enhance the penalty of import of ASP's offenses to the same level as other similar offenses in the same ordinance to address the concerns of the healthcare sector and the education sector. This is to ensure that the new control scheme will be strictly enforced to stop ASPs from leaking into the local market. When the bill is passed, the work of TACO on import of ASPs under the Smoking Public Health Ordinance will not be affected. So we will not accept Dr. Lam's amendment. Our proposed arrangement on enforcement under the bill has been proved to be effective in the combat of ASPs and to stop ASPs from leaking into the market. I ask members to support the government and support the original bill. I so submit. Thank you.
Dr. David Lam, do you wish to speak again? Thank you. Madam Deputy, I am a layman in enforcement and as well as criminal investigation and prosecution. I'm not sure about judicial proceedings because I'm not law enforcement officer. Section 13D, the enforcement powers will be given to inspectors of TACO. The person in charge of TACO is a doctor, younger than I am, probably smarter, but then I don't think his expertise lies in investigation and prosecution. The team of TACO is not a disciplined force, rather they are just foremen. There may be tons of ASP laws, and is it really reasonable to ask TACO to enforce the law? Of course, TACO and also CNED can have joint operations. CNE officers can have their evidence admitted in court. They can give evidence in court. But if further criminal investigation is needed, and if there are syndicates behind such offenses, do you think TACO can be capable? And the purpose is to, the mission of TACO is to promote a smoke-free environment in Hong Kong. Their duties is to promote health enforcement of smoking public health ordinance and to monitor the enforcement of the ordinance and to deal with complaints and inquiries related to the ordinance. And 3, smoking cessation services. They are never enforcement officers under the Smoking Public Health Ordinance. On the 19th and the 22nd of May, there were 2 public hearings held by the Bills Committee. Whether we're talking about members of the public, academics, and members of the industry for or against the bill, had kind words and commendation for the capability and work of the CNED. Now, they're only talking about 3 areas: an article in transit or an aircraft, an article in transit on a vessel or air transshipment cargo. Not all the enforcement scenarios are to be handled by the CNE department. I think we're here to plug the loophole. It's just like the removal of a tumor. You will ask a specialist surgeon to do it with due regard for effectiveness and efficacy. The purpose is to ensure that prohibited ASP will not find their way into the local market and to ensure that our young people will not be addicted to ASPs. I have no interest in this case, and I'm not speaking for the interests of the sector. I'm just trying to answer to my conscience in speaking out. As a member of the council, I really cannot support this bill. As a member of the public, I'm speechless with regard to the current bill. I ask for division. We will now first vote on clauses with no amendment standing part of the bill. I put a question to you that the clauses with no amendment as set out in the appendix to the script stand part of the bill. Dr. David LAM claims a division. The division bell will rung for 5 minutes.
請大家返回。
Members, please take your seats and be prepared to vote. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there is no question, voting is closed. I display the result. Members present 77, 74, 2 against, 4 abstentions. The question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Ms. Starry Lee. President, I move that in the event of further divisions being claimed at this meeting in respect of the Import and Export Amendment Bill 2023, this Council shall proceed forthwith to the division after the division bill has been rung for 1 minute. I now propose the question that Ms. Starry Lee's motion be passed. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against? I think the question is agreed by majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. I direct that shall there be further divisions claimed at this meeting in respect of this bill, the Council shall proceed to the division after the division bill has been rung for 1 minute. We'll now vote on the amendment. Dr. David LAM, you may move your amendment. Chairman, I move the amendment set out in the appendix to the script and propose the question to that Dr. David Lam's amendment be passed. I claim the division. Dr. David Lam claims a division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there is no question, voting is closed. I display the results. Members returned from ECs 32 present, 5 for, 20 against, 7 abstentions. Members returned from FCs and GCs 45 present, 3 for, 34 against, 7 abstentions. The motion is not agreed by a majority of each of the 2 groups of members present. I declare the amendment negative. And I put a question to that clause 3 stand part of the bill. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against? I think the question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. All the proceedings on the Import and Export Amendment Bill 2023 have been concluded in Committee of the Whole Council. Council now resumes. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. President, I now report to the Council that the Import and Export Amendment Bill 2023 has been passed by Committee of the Whole Council without amendment. I move the motion that this Council adopts the report, and I propose the question to you that the Secretary's motion be passed. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against? I think the question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Third reading. In Secretary for Transport and Logistics